Hello, this is Lisa in Imagination Sisterhood Studio, and today I wanted to talk about and show you how you can take one kit that you've purchased from Etsy and do how to change it up so that you can do a variety of things with it without being really computer savvy or anything, that you can just take it, the print the way it is, and use it exactly as it is. I'm going to be showing you how to do this with two different kits, just to show you the versatility and how to go about using them. And this is what inspired this whole idea of sharing this. So I made this little mini chunky book with regular papers that came in a kit. Some of them I did do a little something with the size, but you absolutely don't have to. This little mini chunky has 2 signatures with 11 pages in each signature, And it's the same as making any other junk journal. I just took advantage of papers and used them in a slightly different way. What do I mean by that? All right, I was inspired to do this project because of this paper. And I noticed, first of all, it already came and had little squares, and so that made me think of little tiny pages. And I also noticed that it had this little teeny tiny writing, and I'm like, well, gee, that looks like a little tiny page in and of itself. So how can I do something with this? And I did make a beautiful full-size journal with this, so you can do that with it. But what I want to show you is the versatility and how to take the same exact pages that you already have and make it this size, or maybe a little bit bigger, or how to work with the size. That's really what I'm going to talk about, working and changing the size. All right, so this kit came with, like I say, I was inspired by this page. It has this mini print, which I'm going to show you 2 ways to use that. It already came with this page, which is another one that was inspiring. I've already cut pieces out of it, but I had all these different squares already in it, and I'm like, well, that looks like 2 pages out of a junk journal. So I'm going to see what I can do with that. And finally, I saw all the little ephemera pieces that come with all of these kits. And I thought, well, shoot, I can turn something like an envelope into a page. I can turn a note into a page. I can turn these little beautiful sayings that came into there. If I rip it off, that makes 2 pages right there. You've got 1 page, 2 page. Okay, so that's what I want to show you. I want to show you all how you can unlock all that potential in the kits you already have and turn them into something else. So let's start with this first kit, which is called a Cameo kit by Dasyavenue. And what I looked for is, first of all, pages that already have small print. So this checks that box. I looked for pages that have medium-sized print. That checked that box. I also looked for something with larger flowers. And that's where this one came in, all right? So this one was a very large flower, and I'll show you how I use that in the book. So you want to look for 3 different sizes of things. You want to look for maybe a stripe that they have, maybe 2 different stripes and some little patterns. So you want to look at your papers with a whole new set of put on new eyeglasses with a new lens and say, okay, what are my small prints? What are my medium prints, and what are my large prints? Or they may even be pages with small items, medium items, big items. Like this one has a gigantic flower, okay? So that one is obvious. The next thing you're going to do, and those are going to be your base papers. And I tend to use about, if I'm doing like a 11-page, 12-page signature, I might use as many as 8 pages of this. I did, not for the purposes of this demonstration, for the purposes of my book, I did photocopy on the back. You don't have to. That's totally up to you. You can put another print on the back, or you can leave it plain. Okay, let's talk about how do we make my pages. So I like my mini chunky journals to be this size. All right, and they are about, this one's a little bit smaller, as you can tell. They are about, the signature pages are about 2.5 inches wide by 2.5 inches tall. That's just the measurement I use. You can use absolutely any measurement you want, but if you want it to look like this really cute, tiny, chunky thing, I made my signature pages 2.5 tall. Okay, so let's just talk about the tall first. So if I want my pages 2.5 inches tall, let's get rid of all these other and start with my really, truly multi-purpose page, which is this one. All right, so I want my pages 2.5 inches tall. What I am going to do then is measure off my pages. That's pretty easy. So I've got to get rid of my little printing extra strip here first, and then we're going to start measuring out our pages. And then we'll also talk about the way that you can use, like I said, things like envelopes that are almost always included in your kits, tags, which are almost always included in your kits, and how you can just, how they become pages without doing anything to them. And then I'm also going to share what happens if you have a page and you like it, but you'd like to make it smaller. You want to use it, but for whatever reason, it's just too big. And that's something else that's not hard to do. I'm going to show you one easy way to do that. All right, so let me get this all trimmed off. Sorry, I didn't do that first. And we are set. If I want my pages 2.5 inches tall, I'm going to take my ruler, and I am just going to measure every 2.5 inches, which is, here's the first 2.5, next one is 5, and next one is 7.5. And I prefer to rip mine than to cut them. I like that raggedy edge look, so that's what I'm going to do. And you can even use your mat board. Like this one is already, you know, it's got the measurements on it. So if you don't want to use a ruler, you can just stick your ruler right on your mat and measure. And I'm just going to rip. These are going to be my 3. I'm actually going to get 6 pages out of this. 2.5. And the last one is 2.5. 2.5. All right, so now we have our beginning stack of junk journal papers. And you can go through the whole pile of papers. I'm just going to give you a basic idea. All right, so what am I going to do with this strip? Well, I know my signatures, each page is going to be 2.5 by 2.5. So this would be 2.5 by, you can do this any size you want. I just like mine square. So I know that's 2.5 inches across. This is 2.5 wide. I'm going to fold it right there at 2.5 inches. And I'm going to cut it off here. And that gives me my template. Because actually my pages need to be 5 inches wide, and that makes each page 2.5. So 2.5, 2.5 equals 5. So each page is 2.5 tall by 5 wide. So now you're just going to go back through your papers and make them all however wide you want them. I want mine 5 wide, so that's how wide mine are going to be. All right, and I can even rip them a couple at a time. So let's do that. Where's my 5? My 5 inches is right here. And I'm just going to stick that on there and tear all those. So now I have all of these pages that are ready for my signature. 5 inches here. Tear it off. Now actually this is enough if you want to be most of your base pages, because out of that one sheet you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. And just like any other time that you're making your journal, you're going to fold them in half. That's all we're doing. Same as we do any other time we're making a journal. You're folding them all in half, and then you're going to make your signatures. And as you can see, like that had a little tiny print, but I also got this nice big rose right here. So I already have a little of that small flower, big flower going, and I didn't even use another paper. I just used this one paper. Is giving me a nice variety of different. This one has squares on it. I love that. That's even more variety. So even though I'm using the one sheet, it's got a lot of different looks to it. All right. This one's got some more squares on it. Love that. All right. So let's talk about some of our other pages now. This one's very similar to that. So we're going to skip this page. You could measure it out just like we did the other. 2.5 tall by 5 wide. And you can take advantage of that the way it is. Let's talk about this one. All right. So this one, I really want this gigantic flower. And I'll show you where that gigantic flower is. It's actually the background of my cover. And it's huge. See? All right. So I didn't use that for a page, but I certainly could. If I'm going to use this for a page, I want to look at this and say, well, where am I going to get the most of this flower? And I can either choose this flower or this flower. So whichever flower I want, and I love the gigantic one, so I want to get 2.5 inches around that gigantic flower. So the first thing I'm going to do is I know I'm not going to get this whole upper part of that petal. I'm going to get only this probably centerpiece. So the first thing I'm going to do is take some of this off. And now I know that my page is going to have a lot of this in it. And from here, I'm going to measure my 2.5 inches. 2.5, and I am going to do it over here, 2.5, and I'm going to rip this off, get it on my board. I love it on my self-healing cutting board because it gives me all the lines I need. All right, so now I know it's 2.5 tall. It needs to be 5 wide. Now, if I start over here and get 5 inches, this whole page is going to be 2.5 inches, is going to be pretty plain. If I start my picture here, I'm going to get this whole yummy flower. It's going to be part of one page and part of another page. And that's what I want. You might want this little bit of leafy thing. If that's what you want, that's fine. For me, I want mostly flower. I'm going for the most flower I can get. So again, I'm going to take off another piece. And I'm going to measure 5 inches from there, which is getting down right about to the end here. Yep. 5 inches. All right, and now when I fold this in half to make my page, boom, I have got this gorgeous, yummy, I mean, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And next is this little tiny. So that's really fun, okay? So that's how you choose a variety of different sizes using the same papers you already have. You can pick them. All you have to do is print them. You print them off, and then you say, okay, what part of this, or if it's the whole page, like the collage page that I had, you just use the whole page. All right. What happens if you have a print like this? This, to me, is a nice print. It's kind of small, but actually, if you take it down to our 2.5 size, which is going to be about there to here, if I cut that 2.5 by 5, you're going to get a lot of beigey background. And for me, I don't want that. I want tighter flowers, smaller print. So how do I do that without being a computer programmer? This is what it looks like when it's smaller, and this is perfect. As you can see, this is 5 inches wide, and there's a 2.5 tall. And so you can see with this, that's a much better size. I have more pattern on it. It looks prettier. I like it better. All right. I have a image on the screen. I can show you what you need to do when you go to print this. So to make this happen, all you do is go to your printer. You select, you're on this image. You click on the button that I've highlighted in the visual here. And you're going to go over to the percentage and say, make this 30% of this, or make this 40% of this, whatever is less than 100. All right, so this is 100% print. You want it less than 100%. And every percentage that you make it, it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller on the big white box on your printer. And you'll be able to have an idea of how big is this going to be. Okay, now I get it. This wastes a lot of paper, but this is the easiest way that I know to tell you how to take a print like this and be able to use it small. Okay. And you can watch as you shrink down the percentages, you're going to see this image scooch away from the side. And you can say, oh, well, maybe I want it this big, or maybe I need it however big you want it. You might have to print it off once. For example, I printed this one off. I don't think this is 5 inches wide. Oh, it is exactly 5 inches wide, but I had no way of knowing that. So I just printed it off and it happened to be 5 inches wide. If I printed it off a little bit smaller, it might have only been 4.5. So then I'd have to go back in, do another print of the same picture and just make it, instead of 30%, maybe make it 35% or maybe 40%. And that will make it that next size bigger. That will give me the 2.5 by 5 that I need it to be. All right, so if you look at all of the, if you do screen captures of all of the pop-ups that I showed you of what your computer workspace is going to look like when you print, you'll be able to remember how to do this. I also will try and stick those, a link to those in the description. All right, so that's how to take a big print and make it smaller so that it works. The last thing I want to talk about, not the last thing, one more thing. Let's talk about envelopes. So this helps you look at envelopes in a different way. So this envelope, I did make it smaller, okay? But it's already a page because if I sew this into my signature, this is the size of my book, okay? So when you get all of those beautiful envelopes that come in kits, just think about, oh, well, how if I need it 2.5 tall, then that's how tall I'm going to make my envelope, print it up, and then now it just becomes a really pretty page. Let me see, where did I put that in there so you can see what I did with it? I know it's in here somewhere. Let's see, where is it? There it is. See? So that could go, it could have sewn in. I didn't, I actually glued it on, but you could sew it right in. Another thing you could obviously do is take regular pages and, you know, glue a piece on there. If you have something that you can't quite get 5 wide and you wanted a whole piece, then take one of your pages, glue it on, and that way you can get more of these prints. All right, so the only thing I wanted to show you now, because that was pretty easy to me. We've got all these different size pictures and prints and flowers and stuff like that, which is what I like to work with. What happens if it looks more like this? So this is another kit of Dassie's. This is called Vintage Sewing, and it has pages that look like this, which are beautiful, all right? But how am I going to use those, this gigantic page? Again, I can rip it into my, this here would be 2.5 by 5. So that's what my page would look like, and that's perfectly fine. That's adorable for a little chunky sewing book, all right? But what I can also do is look at this great image down here at the bottom. So you might want to have a template. This is 2.5 by 5, and hold it up to some of your papers and say, okay, what would look good? Look what happens if I do it right here. So if I take this and make this my page, now one whole page becomes this gigantic spool, which I love. I just think that's great. It's so cute. It's so sweet. Really interesting to look at. And the other side of my page would have this little safety pin and the lines, the dotted lines from the pattern. The same for this side. Like, I can't use the sewing machine. I might be able to get part of this. Yeah, see, if I line up my template on top of that sewing machine, I could get that sewing machine would be one of my pages, okay? But what I like better, and I can get several pages out of this, so I can get the sewing machine out of there. I can also make one of my pages, put my template down. One of my pages is going to be, I'm going to cover this up, the cute little buttons. So there, that's 2.5 tall, 2.5 wide. If we go over to 5 wide, that's this whole section. And in this case, you got some legs in there. Okay, maybe I don't want the legs. So this page is going to be a little shorter. Or maybe I'm not going to worry about the legs. Or maybe I'll glue something on top of the legs. So what I like is I've got the measuring tape, I've got all the gigantic buttons, and that is going to go along with whatever my little print is. So this is going to be my big print, like the gigantic flower in the other one, versus, you know, some of the little teeny tinies like this. These are going to be my big prints. These will be my smaller prints. Okay, let's look at this page, which comes with this kit. This one, I shrunk this down, so it's not the full 8.5 by 11. I shrunk it down, and I'm going to say it's maybe 75%, okay, versus this one that I put the 30% in the box, all right? So this one's 75, and as you can see, it's slightly smaller, but look at all the little tiny writing I got in that. Once again, let's use our template and put it on here. That's what 2.5 is going to be. That's what 5 is going to be. So I'm going to get all these great little tiny words, great little sewing machines. So this one is going to be perfect for that little tiny print that I was talking about. Looking for that little tiny print that your kit already has. Excuse me. Again, take the edges off, measure 2.5 tall, measure 5 wide, rip those off. That is going to give you at least 2 to 3 separate pages for your signature. All right, last thing I want to talk about, and this is a little trickier, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about how to do this, but these were things that came with this kit. These button cards came with this kit, and I fiddled with these a little bit. I'm not going to tell you how to do this, but you could easily cut out a piece of paper, cut out the button cards if they're the right size, glue them on a page manually, where I did it digitally. I used the cards and then put them on here. But look at this adorable page. I just made it smaller, and that made, this is just a little ephemera page that has spools and rulers and scissors and all kinds of stuff. That's going to make the perfect page. I might not get all of it on there, but that's fine. Maybe I don't need it all. All right, but it's going to get a lot of that, and that's just from the ephemera page. Here's another ephemera that came with it. It was this beautiful lace border. That is going to be a gorgeous page, and that's just as it came. I didn't do anything to that. If I printed off that border, I'm just going to measure off my 2.5 inches by 5 inches, and I'm going to get a page that has gorgeous, gorgeous lacy flowers on it. I'll get 2 pages out of that. All right. So that's your ephemera pages. Last one, again, this is more about envelopes. So if you look at this and don't see it as an envelope, if we take off the top and we take off the bottom, look at that. I have a journal page. It's already the size I need it to be, okay? Okay, so I can use it just like it is. It's an envelope, but if I take advantage of the fact that it's got the fold line, it's already got the square pages in it. This one too. If I just cut off the little tabby pieces, or you can leave them on, it doesn't make any difference. But that's where you fold it, and that goes into the corner of the pocket of signature, and it just makes a regular page. Same with this one. I love this cute little print. Fold it in half. Oh, suddenly I have a page, and it's 2 pages. Okay, so I hope this has helped you see another way that you can use all the kits that you've already bought in a completely different way. Pull them out and start looking at them and look for, okay, which kit has little tiny prints, medium-sized prints, and taller prints, and all this little ephemera becomes perfect. These little ephemera become pockets, they become pages. So just look at your kits that you already have with new eyes, just a completely new way of looking at them, and say, okay, where do I have? And almost all your kits are going to come with big prints, middle prints, small prints, stripes, and ephemera and envelopes. So all of your kits now you can pull out. You can copy off a couple pages and start looking for those strips that are going to be however tall you want your pages. If you want 3-inch pages, okay, cut out a strip that's 3 inches by however big you want your signature, 5 or 6 inches maybe, and then start looking at, okay, what part of this page will make the perfect page for my chunky book or any book. I hope you enjoyed this video, this tutorial on how to go back into your papers and find new ways to unlock some whole new projects with kits you already have. Thanks for creating with me. This is Lisa in Imagination Sisterhood Studio.